If Heat had a baby and that baby was raised by the dude from The Big Lebowski, it would grow up to become the Den of Thieves. Welcome to the breakdown of Den of Thieves, guys, a video a lot of you have been asking for in the comments. Yes, we read them, and a video that was almost as fun to write, record, and produce as it was to watch the movie. Den of Thieves can pride itself on a few things. It has a fantastic firearms gallery, something we'll get to later, and the two big shootout scenes were beautifully choreographed, also something we'll get to later. One thing it can't pride itself on is subtlety, as this movie does not hide how obsessed it is with Heat. Den of Thieves is what you get when you take producers, writers, actors, and a director, all of whom are obsessed with the very same movie, and you let them write a love letter to it. It's time to break down this film, its enviable gun collection, the beautiful shootouts, but above all, its love for a Hollywood classic. Now, what is it with movie critics and their inability to appreciate a just fun movie? Not every movie has to be deep and profound, with moving character development and a poignant circular structure that wraps around itself by the end of the runtime. Not every heist movie has to be Heat, and here at Shooting Blanks, we love Heat. So that tells you something. It's okay for a movie to be dumb fun. Not every movie has to invoke a strong emotion. It's okay for a movie to just occupy your mind and make you forget about the difficulties of the real world for a few hours. Den of Thieves is not a bad movie. There, we said it, we put it out there. It's a frat bro's love letter to Michael Mann's masterpiece, and it probably never aimed to move mountains the way Heat did. Its purpose was to pay homage to one of the greatest crime thrillers of all time, and in that, it certainly succeeded. There would probably be no Den of Thieves if there were no Heat, and this video wouldn't exist either if it weren't for the hundreds of comments on our Heat video suggesting we do Den of Thieves next. After watching it and analyzing the movie, we can definitely see why you asked for it. For those of you who haven't seen Den of Thieves, it's a movie that does a great job at what it's trying to do. It doesn't copy its main source material, but it certainly nods at it at every given opportunity, and if you haven't seen it yet, we definitely suggest you do, because it's a great way to spend 2.5 hours. Aside from the firearms, which we'll obviously take a deep dive into later, the movie has two great shootout scenes that were beautifully choreographed, and breaking them down is gonna be a blast. Before all that though, we want to do something fun and take a look at the seemingly endless references and parallels to Heat we spotted while watching this movie. Now, we know we mentioned Heat about a dozen times in a video that's supposed to be about Den of Thieves, but these two movies are inseparable. There are so many ways Den of Thieves purposely homages Heat that we feel it's only appropriate we talk about it. We don't feel that the movie is outright copying Heat, despite what many critics are trying to say. Instead, it looks like it's trying to emulate a less serious version of it. I mean, no movie with 50 cents or $1.02 if we adjust for inflation can be serious. So, starting off with the obvious, the premises of the two movies are identical. Den of Thieves is a movie about a group of robbers in LA who are trying to pull off the one heist to rule them all. The robbers are extremely well trained. It's later explained in the movie that they're all ex-military and they're willing to take out anyone in their way. On the other side of the coin, we have the Major Crimes Unit, led by Gerard Butler, who are trying to stop them. Although the writers took huge liberties when developing the characters, their behavior is fairly similar to their Heat counterparts. Butler's Big Nick is an experienced, decorated, and reckless police lieutenant with terrible personal relationship management, and just like Al Pacino in Heat, he loves mentioning a certain body part.
Yeah, we come here for the ass.
Here, she got a great ass! And you got your head all the way up it!
The biggest difference between the two characters is that Pacino's Hannah is a bit more by the book, even if he is intense. Big Nick outright tells criminals he's going to kill them if they don't comply, and he himself admits that the only difference between his unit and the criminals in the movie is the fact that they have badges.
You're not the bad guys. We are.
Another similarity between the two movies is that they both start with an attack on an armored truck. In Heat, the robbers are robbing the armored truck, and in Den of Thieves, they're actually after the truck itself, not the contents of it, but that's neither here nor there. In both movies, a security officer is shot for allegedly going for his gun, with the difference being that in Den of Thieves, the officer actually does go for his gun. The criminals aren't faceless thugs either. We get a glimpse into their personal lives and their motivations in both movies. With the 50 Cent giving his daughter's boyfriend the dad talk scene is especially hilarious. In both movies, the lead detective confronts the main antagonist at a restaurant. Only in Den of Thieves, the entire major crimes unit comes to a Benihana, where they find the entire heist crew enjoying dinner with their families. The confrontation also isn't as long nor as profound as the one in Heat, but the reference is clearly there. The criminals in both movies make it very clear during every robbery that they're not interested in harming civilians, and in both movies, the criminals prepare meticulously and they're very well trained. Den of Thieves also incorporates a shootout in the open, although unlike in Heat, the shootout takes place in the middle of a traffic jam, not in an open financial district. Despite that major difference, each side uses cars for cover. There's a lot of moving undercover and generally a lot of well-executed maneuvers in both movies. The main antagonist openly tells the detective after him that he'll kill him if he gets the opportunity, and that he'd rather die fighting than go to prison again. Both movies end with this prophecy fulfilling itself. Unlike with Hannah and Macaulay, though, there doesn't seem to be as much mutual respect between Merryman and Big Nick. They see one another as targets, not as each other's counterparts, perfectly balancing the scales of justice. And that's pretty much it with the Heat references. It's clear that the core structure of Den of Thieves revolves around Heat, and they sprinkled plenty of Heat's details over their own movie too. There are also a few minor similarities, such as the reliance on aerial shots of Los Angeles or the fact that the major crimes unit is almost always seen together. Aside from Heat, this movie also has Grand Theft Auto 5's signature all over it. In fact, 50 himself said that the movie took inspiration from the legendary video game. This is most obvious in the final heist. While the Den of Thieves crew robs the Federal Reserve in Los Angeles, the GTA 5 crew robs the Union Depository of Los Santos. Garbage trucks are key to both final heists, and in both the movie and the game's heist, the robbers are seen wearing gas masks. The references to one of the greatest video games of all time aren't all that surprising, given that Grand Theft Auto 5 referenced Heat a bunch of times, and that sorta makes Den of Thieves the love child of those two legendary titles. With all of that in mind, and in response to hundreds of critics accusing this movie of shamelessly copying Heat, there's nothing wrong with having fun. And this movie is most definitely not copying Heat. No movie can copy Heat, at least not successfully, and most directors are aware of that. Den of Thieves is just a very fun homage to it, and pretending it's an attempt at copying Heat is an insult to both movies. Now that we've got that out of the way, it's finally time to take a look at the loadouts. Starting off with Handguns. Big Nick carries a Smith & Wesson M&P, which is his EDC service handgun. The M&P stands for Military and Police, and this handgun was introduced to dozens of police departments all across the United States around 2005. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department adopted the original M&P handgun in 2013, but made the switch to the 2.0 model over time because the original model kept discharging by accident. In the movie, Big Nick uses the original model, and you can tell the difference by the grips. His M&P is also kitted with reflex sights. During the final shootout, however, Big Nick carries the FNX-45 Tactical. This is the largest gun in the FNX family with a 5.3-inch barrel, which is almost an inch longer than the original FNX-45, despite weighing the same. It's instantly recognizable because of its threaded muzzle, or threaded barrel, whichever term you want to use, which is used to attach a suppressor, compensator, or some other muzzle device. Nick's FNX-45 Tactical also comes with a red dot mounted on top. All in all, a cool gun, and it takes just a single look to realize why the on-set armorers chose the FNX, but we can't seem to find any information on whether law enforcement actually uses this gun. There are some rumors online that some departments in Florida use the FNX and the FNP, but it's impossible to confirm which departments, if any, use it. If any of you guys know for a fact where this gun is used, drop it in the comments below. Aside from these two guns, handguns aren't that important in this movie. Merryman uses an HK-45C and a Sig Sauer P226 throughout the entire film, but what takes the cake is something that at first glance looks like future tech, and it's something we very rarely get to see in movies. Of course, we're talking about RONI. What we see 50 handling here is called a RONI conversion kit. RONI isn't an acronym. The kit was just named after the daughter of the founder of CAA Industries, which manufactures these. Now, before we get into explaining how a RONI works, we'll just preface this entire section by saying that there's a lot of online debating about the usefulness of this kit. Some people think it's entirely useless, just a gimmick more than anything. Others believe it's worth the investment. We're gonna hold off on our judgment on that, but what we can say is that it certainly does look cinematic, and it's understandable why someone would want to put it in their action movie. Whether a professional would opt for it in real life is an entirely different question. So Roni is a conversion kit, and it basically provides the shooter with a better platform for handling their handgun. It works by simply placing your handgun into the kit and locking it in. According to the manufacturer, using Roni dramatically increases accuracy, and that's not at all surprising since the kit allows for better balancing thanks to wider hand arrangement. It has a stock and a foregrip. Aside from better accuracy, you also get a rail much longer than the default rail on your handgun, so you can fit more attachments. As you can see, 50 has some sort of optic attached to his kit. What the Roni does not do is turn your semi-automatic P226 into an assault rifle, and that's apparently what happens in this movie, at least according to IMFDB. Now, IMFDB, which is the holy grail of firearms in cinema, says that the handgun 50 uses with his Roni is a P226. As we all know, that is a semi-automatic handgun. However, in every scene where 50 uses his gun, we hear and see automatic gunfire. Here are a few examples. And we see the same thing in the final shootout.
Move it! Moving! Move it!
This means that either IMFDB is wrong, which is possible, or the firearm advisors on set made a grievous mistake, which is also possible, but less likely. Den of Thieves was supplied by ISS, Independent Studio Services, which boasts quite possibly the largest prop gun armory in all of Hollywood. They worked on movies like Rambo, Transformers, The Dark Knight, Flags of Our Fathers, and many, many others. It's possible that IMFDB misidentified the handgun used with Roni. After all, 50 keeps his hand on it the entire time and you can't really see it. It's likely that he used something like a Glock 18, which is an automatic handgun compatible with Roni. Sounds fairly similar to this, right? Anyway, just wanted to clear that up. Overall, a very cool weapon system to see, even if it likely wouldn't be first choice in real life. Another cool weapon, might as well say legendary weapon, is the Scar. This is Big Nick's primary firearm for the final shootout, and he's straight up raw dogging it. No optics, no nothing, just his scar and pent-up aggression he's been hiding under layers of masculine bravado for decades. It's kind of ironic that he's using it because 50 Cent's and Pablo Schreiber's characters, the criminals he's shooting at, are former MARSOC operatives, and MARSOC is part of SOCOM, the command for which the Scar was designed. The light variation of the firearm, which is the one we see Big Nick use, fires standard 5.56x45 NATO rounds, and that's the biggest difference between the light and heavy variation, as the latter fires 7.62x51mm rounds. Aside from that, Scar L comes in with a 2-inch shorter barrel at 14 inches, while Scar H has a 16-inch barrel. Originally, Scar was supposed to replace the beloved M4, the M4 with CQBR, and the Mark 12 Special Purpose Rifle, but that ultimately didn't happen. Even though the writing on the wall in 2010 said that SOCOM would adopt both Scars, they abruptly canceled the acquisition of Scar L, claiming that there wasn't enough of a performance difference in comparison to other rifles of the same caliber to justify the order. Despite that, Scar H is in service in the United States, with the light variant in use with the LAPD SWAT teams and customs. Aside from that, at least 15 different countries around the world use some variation of Scar. Scar is generally a beloved gun, and although some people did report jamming problems, most operators appreciated it for its reliability. If you guys shot a Scar, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. There are two funny things about the Scar in this movie. For one, it appears that Big Nick is fixing the stock in his bicep for some reason. We don't know if it's just an illusion created by the camera angle, if Gerard Butler got too buff for this role, or if the straps on his kit are too thick and no one showed him how to deal with that, but we see the Scar butted into his bicep on several occasions. Secondly, there's a mistake in this very scene, because just moments ago Big Nick was shooting and now all of a sudden he doesn't have a mag and he's for some reason pulling the trigger while walking around with an ammo-less gun. The on-set advisors should have spotted that. That's a pretty big mistake. Up next, we have the Noveske N4 Diplomat. There is nothing special about this gun, we're just mentioning it because it's used by Cheddar Bob, who, in this movie, manages to not shoot himself with his own gun. In this movie, he gets shot by someone else. We also briefly get to see a Saiga 12K shotgun with a drum magazine, which is a fairly rare gun in movies and television. The Saiga also has a chainsaw grip. The Saiga was created by Kalashnikov. Yes, that Kalashnikov. And it's basically the answer to the "what if an AK-47 had a shotgun child" question. It's a gas-operated rotating bolt shotgun, and the movie version comes with a 20-round mag, which is uncommon enough to deserve a shout-out. Outside of its native Russia, it's used by the French Special Police and some American SWAT teams. The gun that really takes the cake, though, and deservedly so, is the saw.
Pass me the saw. Let's go.
Merriman's line, "It is so out of left field because there was no hint or mention of a saw throughout the entire movie. It caused immediate neuron activation for everyone watching." The SAW, standing for Squad Automatic Weapon, is a very well-known LMG that's been in service since the 80s. The variant we see in the movie is an airsoft replica of the Paratrooper SAW, which comes with a sliding stock, a shorter barrel at 13.7 inches, which shortens its overall length, and it's lighter than the original at 16 pounds. Funnily enough, this is the same gun Pablo Schreiber shot in his role as Tanto in 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi, which is a legendary military movie. This gun introduces us to a very enjoyable moment in the movie, specifically the moment we hear the sweet sound of 5.56 NATO zipping through the air and ripping through cars.
Sheriff's Department, lady, get in the car!
With this in mind, the sound design in this movie is very good, specifically in shooting scenes. Although we can't find that info anywhere, it looks like they were using blanks during shooting and focused on good microphone placement instead of adding sound effects in post-production. In case you didn't see our Heat video, Michael Mann insisted on the same thing for Heat's iconic financial district shootout scene, and with that, he kinda set the bar for glorious sound quality in action films. Something that also deserves commending here is Pablo Schreiber's stance. He put his non-dominant hand over his other shoulder to try to stabilize the gun, which is desperately needed when you mount a tripod on a surface that provides too much bounce, such as the hood of a car. This was probably recommended by the on-set advisors to make the shooting look realistic, and it worked. With that, we've covered all the firearms bases in this movie, and it's time to take a look at the reality of the shootouts. There are only 2 shootouts in the movie, but they're both well choreographed, and it's obvious the on-set advisors knew what they were doing. Both the actors playing the police officers and the robbers went through 2 separate boot camps in preparation for this movie. The make-believe police officers were trained by Jay Dobbins, a retired ATF special agent, while the outlaws worked with military consultant Paul Maurice. The 2 boot camps were separated on purpose to create a bit of a contest between the rival groups. On top of that, Gerard Butler has an entire list of action movies he starred in, so he's pretty well versed with firearms, and the same can be said of Pablo Schreiber, who, as said before, played Tanto in 13 Hours. Before the police arrive and before the real shooting starts, we have a cool little moment with the breaching charge set on the back door of the van. In a blink and you'll miss it moment, you can see water spraying all over the place as the charge explodes. This is because of tamping. Tamping is a method of directing the blast inwards, toward the van door in this case, and it's most often done with water, soil, or sandbags. It's very often used with breaching charges to improve effectiveness and ensure that the blast does its job and opens the door. It's pretty cool that the on-set advisors paid attention to it and made the breaching as realistic as possible. Shortly after that, the group hears the police arriving and shouts out all the right things. Contact right, prepare to engage, suppressive fire. At the same time, they all get behind cover. There's not one man out in the open once the shooting starts. The same thing happens when they spot contact left. The entire shootout is overall very well designed. All of the guys are ex-military after all, and it's only realistic that they're always staying behind cover, specifically hiding behind engines, as that's the thickest part of a vehicle. And the only time someone gets shot is when they abandon the safety of cover. One weird thing we see in this shootout is Cheddar Bob, or Bosco as he likes to be called in this movie, holding his diplomat sideways. It's really difficult to justify this. He's gaining nothing by doing it, he's already kneeling behind the engine block, and he's already peeking over it, so he's not exactly shrinking his profile. The production probably added this detail on purpose because it's implied that Cheddar Bob is somewhat of a thug and generally an unreliable person. The shootout ends pretty quickly, and there's not much action until the end of the movie. Then, however, we get the biggest Heat reference in the entire film. Shootout on the road? Check. No one bounds without cover? Check. No one shoots without clear intention? Check. This gunfight definitely deserves all the praise it gets. Sure, there are some contextual things that maybe don't make the most sense. For example, a lot of people are questioning whether police officers would actually engage in the middle of a traffic jam, knowing that civilians will most definitely get hurt. There's also the fact that only a few people leave their cars once the detectives start evacuating people, and everyone who's ever been in a traffic jam knows that there would be at least 50 people running all around in real life. We will, however, observe the gunfight in a vacuum. The constraints of real life that don't have anything to do with the words bullet or firearm don't matter at this point. The outlaws are the first to open fire as the police get closer to them, using cars for cover. Merryman uses his saw to put down suppressive fire and buy time for his guys to retreat as much as possible. One of the detectives is immediately killed as the rest take cover. Unlike most Hollywood movies where someone plays the hero, everyone just hides behind cover and nobody moves until Merryman stops shooting. This is how suppressive fire works in real life. We talked about this on the channel before, but it never hurts to repeat. In a fire team, someone always has to provide cover fire while the rest of the squad is moving. Whether the mobile parts are retreating or advancing is irrelevant. You have to keep enemies' heads down if you want the rest to make it from point A to point B safely. This is perfectly executed here, and the same thing was perfectly executed in Heat. Realizing that they won't be establishing fire supremacy anytime soon, Big Nick sends 2 detectives on a flanking mission. He and another detective, Tony Z, will press them here, and the 2 other detectives will cut them off when they start running. Big Nick and Tony Z keep pushing forward, one moves while the other shoots, and the outlaws are doing the same thing, only they're doing it in the opposite direction as they're retreating. Every single time somebody moves or orders another person to move, you can actually hear them say it. Either way, in neither of the groups does someone take a step without that step being covered by suppressive fire, and the entire scene is incredible to watch. The mag changes are pretty clean too, with the guys actually informing their binome, as the French call it, of the mag change. We also get this very cool moment when Tony Z pops behind cover, shoots Cheddar Bob, and moves back into cover. Big Nick, knowing that Tony hit something, pops behind cover too, takes a shot, and moves back. At this moment, Merryman and 50 make a run for it. They're still covering one another as they're moving, but they realize that the circle around them is getting tighter and tighter, so they have to sacrifice caution for speed. This is where the cutoff crew comes into play. We have to appreciate the incredible sound engineering that does a great job at raising tension. Turns out that 10th shot was the fatal one, huh? Big Nick chases Merryman as the leader of the group makes a run for it. Whenever they find themselves in a natural choke point, Merryman turns around to suppress Nick and even manages to graze him. But as he jumps over the fence, Big Nick shoots him through the thin metal sheet fence and seriously wounds him. Bullets do go through thin enough surfaces for those wondering, so this is definitely realistic. Merryman knows that he's going to die soon if he doesn't get out of here, and his only hope of getting out of here is killing Big Nick, so he desperately fights back. He also gives us a cool tutorial on how to reload using your legs if one of your hands is incapacitated or otherwise busy. But that's pretty much the end of the road for Merryman. Nick has the upper hand and Merryman runs out of ammo, draws his empty gun on Nick on purpose, and forces him to open fire. And that is pretty much how the movie ends, at least the parts that interest us. We've beaten this horse to death so many times in this movie, but we'll repeat it one more time. Den of Thieves is a better movie than some people would have you believe. Is the movie perfect? No. There's no character development, the entire story revolves around referencing Heat, and some of the dialogue is cheesy, but get this, maybe it was meant to be cheesy. Maybe the word bro was forced into the dialogue a million times by design. Maybe the bravado is there because it's fun, not because it's supposed to shake the viewer to their core. Maybe, as someone on Reddit perfectly put it, this movie really was directed by a can of Monster Energy. The point remains, the movie is great at what it does. It's a frat bros Heat, and there's nothing wrong with that. As for the things we're interested in, the movie gets a very solid 8 out of 10. The shooting scenes are realistic, fantastic, absolutely beautiful to watch, and the on-set advisors, coordinators, prop guys, and the cast all deserve plaudits for that. If we were rating the enjoyment the average person feels when watching these scenes, they'd get 10 out of 10, but we have to account for the one huge mistake too. There is a moment, don't forget, when Big Nick is moving around an active battlefield without a mag in his gun and while pulling the trigger, which is unacceptable. Aside from that though, there are no mistakes, all the firearms are accurately portrayed, and their handling is clearly drilled into the actors. Even the breaching was done right. All in all, don't let anyone tell you Den of Thieves isn't a good movie, they're just lying to themselves. What did you think of it? Did you spot the clear similarities with Heat? And what movie do you want to see broken apart next? Let us know in the comments below.